Hi, everybody. So we're back, and this is April 15th's lesson. And so I'm going to be talking to you in this half of the lesson about your vocab for today, as well as the reading, Alvin Ailey. It's something that you've already browsed before to sort of prepare yourself for today's lesson, but today you'll be doing some in-depth reading for it. And lastly, we'll just talk a little note about the importance of avoiding plagiarism, of not plagiarizing, and sort of ways to prevent that. So first, talking about the vocab for today, I want you to make sure that you are looking through these Google Slides presentations to help provide as much information as possible as you're watching these video lessons and going through your activities. Okay, so starting with the first vocab lesson slide um, in the presentation for today. There's an image that includes all of the vocab words for today. And so I want you to practice, number one, reading these words aloud. Then I want you to make sure that you're trying to pronounce the words correctly to your best ability, right? All I ask is that you try. And then try to recall what these words mean because you've already seen them, but and you were given definitions for those words, but without looking back at those definitions, I want you to try to remember what these words mean, okay? So I can read these words for you now. These words are, the first word is premiered, then debut, dawdled, blues, dignity, jazz, sleek, choreography, heritage, and tempo. Again, when you're reading these words, when you're thinking about these words, make sure that you're thinking about what part of speech they are, right? In a lot of your submissions from the last vocab lesson, I had people using words that as a verb that were not verbs, and likewise as a noun that were not nouns. So just do your best to try to look at those parts of speech, the definitions, think about how the words are pronounced, and you'll do great. So for today's vocab quiz, basically I want you to open up the Google Doc if you're using Google Classrooms. If you're using the packet, just go to the end of the vocab lesson and write one synonym for each of the vocab words there. Okay, remember that a synonym is a word, or synonyms are words that have similar or very similar meanings. So think about these different words, premiered, debuted, dawdled, and so forth, and think about what synonyms might match up with those words, okay? Moving on to the reading portion of today's lesson. So today, of course, you're going to be reading Alvin Ailey by Andrea D. Pinkney. And so I've already sort of given you a little backdrop about this text, but just as a reminder, it is a biographical text, right? Remember those elements of a biographical text. If you need a refresher, go back to Monday's lesson and look at those different elements of a biographical text. But it's about a young black man's journey to becoming a legendary dancer. And it also discusses several of the social changes that are occurring from the 1940s to the 1960s in America. And it also talks about Catherine Dunham, who was an anthropologist, an ethnographer, and also someone that was a professional dancer, a very popular dancer during her time. So next week, for your social studies lesson, I plan on doing some videos and some questions relative to Catherine Dunham. Should be pretty cool. So uh, as far as your reading lesson goes, make sure that you are using the following comprehension strategies, okay? In other words, these are strategies that will help you to understand the text that you are reading far better. So first, I want you to focus on the sequential order or the chronological order of the events as they're occurring in the text. I also want you to pay attention to the main ideas and the most important details of what's going on in the text. So you should be reading Alvin Ailey silently to yourself. Anywhere from 25 to 30 minutes. If it takes a little longer, that's okay. Take your time, but you should be taking at least somewhere around 25 to 30 minutes to read it. And so as you read, I want you to focus on the sequence of events, that chronological order of events as it's occurring in the text. Remember that chronological order has to do with the events in linear order. So one thing after the other. Okay, this happened, then this happened, next this happened, lastly, blah, 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 right? So think about those events as they're occurring. Another thing that could assist you is to think about sequential order kind of like choreography. So Alvin Ailey has his own choreography in the story, his own sort of dance steps, okay? So in that choreography, one dance step follows the next dance step, right? So a sort of similar analogy would be sequential order. In this biographical narrative, in the story of his life, there are going to be different events, one after the other, right? Sort of like dance steps. So you could think about sequential order in that way, right? Life is kind of like a dance, right? One thing after the other. So also, again, you need to be thinking about what are the main ideas and important details that are occurring in this story, especially details relative to social change. There are some details about segregation during that time, so the separation between races in the United States and how that affected people's everyday life in the United States. So make sure that you're paying attention to those details and that you're writing about them. In the following thing that I'll talk about. So after you read, there's going to be a reading recap assignment. And in that assignment, I want you to, again, if you're using Google Classroom, open up the Google Doc. If you're reading the packet, just go through the packet, through the reading lesson, and those assignments will be there in the packet for you. But I want you to fill out the Google Doc, and basically there are going to be two short answer questions that you need to respond to, and your responses should range anywhere from 2 to 5 complete sentences. The first question is going to have to do more so with sequential order, the sequence of events, and different clues that tell you how the sequential order is happening. And then the second question is going to have to do more with questions about social change, what's going on during these decades between the 40s and the 60s, and how Alvin Ailey was witnessing these changes in his own life. So make sure that you are reading that text closely and just doing your absolute best. I know we're all trying our very best to put our best work forth during this challenging time, and I really appreciate you guys continuing to do your best, continuing to learn new material, even as things are changing all around you all the time. So you're doing a fantastic job, and I appreciate it. Um, Lastly, I just want to talk briefly about plagiarism, okay? So this is just important to talk about since we're moving to, especially since we're moving to more of an online setting, it becomes very easy to just copy and paste material from the internet, from texts and things like that, and put them in your answers. That is a no-no. Don't do that. Do not copy and paste. Um, Copying and pasting other people's material is the same thing as stealing, and stealing is wrong. Okay? When you take when you take credit for someone else's intellectual property, that is wrong. That's stealing. So make sure that you are doing your absolute best to, number one, give credit where it's due, right? Saying that you got this idea from another person, right? Um, and later on in your writing career, you'll learn how to really cite sources well, especially for research papers and that sort of thing. But in addition to that, you need to make sure that you are presenting your own original thoughts, your own ideas, and not just taking someone else's thoughts, right? I'm more interested in what you have to say about the topic than to see that you can copy and paste someone else's work. And of course, I'm not putting the blame on anybody. I just want to say that this is an important topic to talk about, especially as we are moving to online learning. So thank you all for listening, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.